the Attorney General's office just left the federal courthouse from Judge Marbley, and there are no court orders this evening, so polls closed on time, votes are being tabulated, and there are no court orders to delay any results. Essentially, the Ohio Republican Party had filed an amended complaint in a dormant lawsuit that was actually the subject of the case that went to the United States Supreme Court. And in that case, a couple of the issues that they wanted Judge Smith in that case to deal with dealt with two directives that had been issued by our office, one relating to provisional ballots and the other relating to instructions for conducting an unofficial canvass, which is essentially the count of our votes in this election night. Because the issues relating to provisional ballots have already been dealt with in another earlier filed case pending in the same court before a different judge, before Judge Marbley, the Attorney General asked that the cases be consolidated. Initially, what Judge Marbley dealt with was the question of whether or not counsel for the Ohio Republican Party, who had previously represented Secretary Blackwell in that case that was filed in 2006, could actually represent the Ohio Republican Party against essentially Ken Blackwell's successor, which would be myself. The judge believes that the Republican Party, from my understanding, would need to seek other counsel and did then proceed to consolidate the issues relating to the two directives in question, that being uniform standards for provisional voting, which was established by Directive 2008-101, and also the instructions on the unofficial canvass, which is 2008-105. Those are available on the Secretary of State's website if you want to see detailed information on what those directives are. So at this time, the boards continue to tabulate and to send in their results, and we'll be looking at those as the night goes on. If I can take any questions, I'd be more than happy to.
How's turnout?
Turnout, I don't have final figures on that yet. It appears to me from discussions I've had with some of the larger county election directors, such as Cuyahoga and Lucas, which is Cleveland and Toledo, that we may not reach that 80% turnout, but that it would be at least 60%. Again, it's hard to tell.
Will it still be record turnout for a while?
No, 2004 was probably a record turnout, which was in the 70s. And again, sometimes it's how it's computed, whether it's from the total number of registered voters or the active voters. And those differences are based upon a notice sent out according to the National Voter Registration Act called NVRA, where the voters are eligible, but there are questions and they need to provide verification when they appear to vote.
Turnout running,
Again, it's difficult to tell until the numbers come in. We're left with the situation where a particular election director may actually try to sample some of the key precincts in a county and get a gauge on it. But until we see the votes starting to come in, it's hard for me to tell you anything that you can really bank on.
Do you know how many provisional ballots have been cast statewide, and what's your thinking in terms of whether or not there have been too many in this election?
There have been some concerns about provisional ballots that fall into about two categories. The first category is related more to voter identification. We had some specific complaints in Cuyahoga and Lucas counties about the poll workers. As I may have mentioned earlier, every poll worker was to receive a quick reference guide, which contains specific and uniform information on voter identification and also on provisional voting. We've had some difficulties with the poll workers being a bit overzealous on the identification requirements. The statute indicates that if a person uses their driver's license or their state ID card, they do not have to have the correct address on that. There have been poll workers who have not understood that distinction, thinking that the correct address needs to be on any form of identification that's acceptable, when it's really on those documentary forms such as utility bill, bank statement, government document, paycheck. But if it's a military ID, that's not a requirement, nor is it for the Ohio driver's license or the state issued ID. So about 5:15 this evening, we issued a memorandum to the directors, executive directors, and members of the boards of elections, clarifying what has to happen before there's an issuance of a provisional ballot, and also the ID requirements What I did was personally call the director of the Lucas County Board of Elections, indicated that we were getting this information. She confirmed that they had troubleshooters working with the individual polling places, trying to get across to them that they needed to look very carefully at the instructions again. And so I instructed her to have the troubleshooters literally take this memorandum to those polling places to again instruct the poll workers. Because we're looking at, there would be some of the heaviest turnout between those hours of 5:15 and 7:30. And she assured me that she would be doing that. In Cuyahoga County, there were some specific precincts where there were issues, and Jane Platten, the director, was more than willing to work with the folks who had concerns and to deal with those. Fortunately, we didn't see a lawsuit, which we saw in March primary. Provisional ballots are all voted on paper, and so until the poll workers actually perform reconciliation of any paper ballots and provisional ballots, and by reconciliation I mean they take the total number of ballots that they started with, and they look at how many voted ballots there are, how many spoiled ballots, and how many unvoted ballots, and they should add up the same number of ballots that they started with. Until that reconciliation is performed, and again, along with the poll list and the poll book, and those materials and the memory cards are transported to the Board of Elections by a bipartisan team, Republican and Democrat, in the same car. This is a new thing for them in Ohio. We won't have those figures. We should, by late tonight, by noon tomorrow is when the certified unofficial results are due, and we've given the boards of elections a very detailed form to provide to us for the races and the votes in each county. We should also be able to differentiate for each race the number of absentee ballots and the number of regular ballots and subtotals with the grand total for how many votes in each race for each candidate.
What's your assessment of how the voting unfolded today?
We were very pleased with the way the voting unfolded. To give you a very simplistic reference, one of the attorneys in our office, who has been there since the mid-90s under the Taft administration, who was the predecessor to Blackwell, said she has never, in her years of working in the office, experienced such a smooth presidential election. So we're pleased for the people of the state of Ohio.
Are you surprised the data hasn't come to us? I mean, we were expecting the results of the early voting, extended voting, to be in before now.
Apparently, the boards of elections are connected to our computer system with T1 lines. We have
Did she say she was happy for the state of Ohio
on
to
a
vote?
reversal
State
of
of
actually
Ohio.
using their password and entering their information. And apparently some of the boards have had some difficulty with that. So I'm not really surprised about anything, because I'm not going to be decided to leave until the last vote is in.
So does that